Hi, and welcome to this AI and C# video on the Microsoft Agent Framework, and more specifically, the Azure AI Foundry's Code Interpreter tool. So the Code Interpreter tool is a way for an LLM to run some Python code or generate some Python code and run it in a sandboxed environment. And that can be smart for math questions and stuff, but it can also generate files, like, for example, a graph of some numbers that you wish to present to the user. And that's what we're going to do in this scenario. So the math part is easy because that then just uses the internal part of the result. But if it generates images, it's a bit more difficult. Actually, to be honest, a lot more difficult in Azure AI Foundry because it is a very inconsistent call at the moment that requires various workarounds sometimes to get the file. But we'll see that. So here I am in the sample code interpreter, and let's try to run it. So we just make a normal persistent client, and we take our agent and thread so we can delete them later on. And then we make a code graph agent that can make some graphs over US state populations. We make our agent for agent framework. We start a thread and we ask for a PNG of top 10 US states in year 2000. The reason for year 2000 was that sometimes it actually came back and says, are you sure you want this? I don't have the newest data. So that's the reason I did that. So now it's working, it's generating Python code, it's executing it up in the sandbox, and it's generating the image. So more slow than it used to, but let's see if it comes back at some point. There we go. And our answer back is here's a bar chart. You can download the PDF in the link below, which we of course can't because this is the sandbox that it was in and we don't have access to that. And in the response, the PNG is not there. It's not like we get that, we only get a reference. And that reference is a file ID. And that is where the inconsistencies begin, because I've seen 4 different ways that it gives that back, seemingly at random. The intended way is that on messages, there should be content, and in our case, we are actually lucky with that content because the second content here is actually our file ID here. So in our case, it works, but it's not all the time that this happens. But we end up here, and we can get our file ID, which is this. If it doesn't work, we can do a workaround in that we can get our thread ID and run ID and get the messages directly from the persistent agent client. And then we can go down and find the content of those messages. And sometimes that content is a message image file content where we can get the file ID. Sometimes it's a message text content, which inside have annotations. That sometimes can be a message text file part annotation, and other times is a message text file part citation annotation. Yes, this is confusing, but this is actually needed in all the cases that this can get back. So it can come back like this, here, here, or here. But if we have our file ID, we can finally work, because then we just use the persistent client ID system and get our file content, which in this case is a PNG. And we can write that down into a file and start the file. So we end up with our graph. Probably want to tell it a little about, we don't want E numbers here, but we want real numbers, but that's just prompt engineering. So it is possible. It's damn difficult to get this ID, but with this sample, you at least have the 4 different ways you can get those IDs. And if you pack that away, it's okay. Hopefully at some point this will be consistent, so it happens all the time. But apparently it's difficult because Responses API have exactly something similar, not as funky as this, but it is difficult apparently for them to get these IDs back. It might be a timing issue or something like that. Who knows? But in any case, this is how you work with the code interpreter tool. This was when we created images, but we could also give them a hard math question and it would have worked with that instead. So thank you. See you in the next one.